People who use social media to spread racial hatred should be treated like sex offenders and given new internet ASBOs, banning them from sites such as Facebook and Twitter, according to a group of MPs.
It's a response to a rise in anti-Semitic attacks in the UK, as a parliamentary inquiry warned the internet is now being used to deliver an increasing number of abusive posts. Sky's technology correspondent Tom Cheshire reports.
Inside this synagogue, it's quiet and still. In the world outside, and especially online, the chatter is noisy, sometimes abusive, and increasingly anti-Semitic, according to a report from the all-party parliamentary inquiry into anti-Semitism. The inquiry said that social media was a breeding ground for serious discriminatory and racist content, and recommended that those convicted of inciting hatred online should be barred from using the internet.
If someone was standing opposite someone who was Jewish, giving anti-Semitic abuse, and they were standing next to a policeman, that policeman would stop them in their tracks and take action against them. So it's not such a difficult thing to say that on a different type of media, where you've got Twitter and Facebook, the same sort of thing shouldn't happen. It should be kept in line with what we do in general society on the streets of Britain.
This is a very traditional Orthodox synagogue, and the report makes clear that traditional anti-Semitism is on the rise. 41% of those who responded said they had witnessed anti-Semitic remarks in a social situation face-to-face. But online, that figure goes up to 68%, as people are less inhibited and more offensive. And they use all the tricks of social media. During Gaza conflict last year, the hashtag Hitler was right became a trending topic worldwide. And there are still new tweets being added to that hashtag every day. Sue Pearl says she suffered anti-Semitic abuse on Twitter as a result of her work doing voiceovers for companies advertising holidays in Israel.
About 3 or 4 different people, different trolls, all of a sudden I was getting these really hateful messages, very, very succinct, very short, but very vicious, and talking to me as if they knew me, but you know, it was effing Jew, it was Hitler was right.
Sue took a straightforward approach and quit Twitter. Her 15-year-old son doesn't use Facebook so that he can avoid abuse. The inquiry said that social media companies like Facebook and Twitter could do more to monitor and remove abuse. But some argue that old laws haven't kept up with new media.
For public awareness and in the social conscience, it's not really clear what is an offence and what is not an offence. And if we had a regulatory regime that dealt specifically with social media and made the application of existing laws to that context, it would be a much better way of dealing with the nuances of social media.
This proposed internet ASBO is intended to protect the Jewish community online, but by itself it's a very old-fashioned approach to a modern and complex problem. Tom Cheshire, Sky News.
A short while ago tonight, I spoke to the Archbishop of Canterbury, who launched that report today. I asked him if anti-Semitism is really a growing problem.
The evidence is absolutely clear that it is in fact a growing problem, and has been with spikes and dips, but it is a growing problem.
Why? Is it qualitatively different from Islamophobia or any other sort of race-based hatred, or is it simply more embedded in our culture?
I think that's a very insightful question. It certainly goes back several hundred years, in fact probably more than a millennium, in which there has been this embedded sense of anti-Semitism. Whether it's qualitatively different is a different question, but it's so deeply in the culture, it seems to be something we have to struggle with constantly.
And how can we clamp down on it? What do you think needs to be done in changing the law?
I think it's not just changing the law. I think, first of all, it has to be clear that it is totally unacceptable, and the use of anti-Semitic imagery drawn from the past, and particularly the 30s and 40s, is really a very, very serious matter indeed. Secondly, the law does play a part, and there are a lot of recommendations in this report that have come out today that are very significant in terms of improving the enforcement of the law. And thirdly, I think media, churches, all have to be very, very clear, civil society generally, has to be very clear about their detestation of anti-Semitism.
The Community Support Trust, which, as you know, is responsible for security, said in its annual report of the Jewish community that the single biggest contributing factor to the record number of anti-Semitic incidents recorded in 2014 was anti-Semitic reactions to the UK, in the UK, to the conflict in Israel and Gaza. Do you see any relevance of the Middle East political situation to all of this?
Well, of course it's highly relevant because you have people living in this country who take radically different views on what should be happening, and things are portrayed, or we see things that perhaps sometimes we understand, sometimes we don't, that trigger furious and passionate reactions.
There is also, of course, whether we like it or not, the question of freedom of speech. Do you think that it is practical to try and police Twitter, police the internet, have prevention orders and making anti-Semitic remarks a hate crime? Is that a practical solution, do you think?
Well, I think you'd have to ask the platforms that, like Twitter and Facebook, about the practicality. I mean, it's a technical question. It seems to me it should be practical, and certainly there should be capacity for the Crown Prosecution Service, for the police and law enforcement, to make sure that people who abuse freedom of speech are not allowed to get back on these platforms in the same way.
Would you actually support bans on people being able to say these things and criminal sanctions if they do?
For serious cases, emphatically, yes, I would. In the same way as you wouldn't have anyone on Sky who consistently used hate speech.